Introduction. The Industrial Revolution was a changeover to new industrial processes from somewhere in 1760 to sometime between 1820 and 1840. This evolution comprised of moving from manufacturing goods with hands to machineries, bettered efficacy of water power, manufacturing of new chemicals and producing iron through new ways, usage of steam power, the advancement of machine tools and the upsurge of the factories. In terms of employment, fabrics were the leading trade of the Industrial Revolution. Keeping in mind the value of production and the principle invested, the fabric industry was the first to use contemporary manufacturing ways. The foundation of the Industrial Revolution was laid in the United Kingdom, and some of the most significant technical inventions were from Britain. The revolution took place in 1815 and continued to the next century. The steam power was a breakthrough in this revolution. The idea was mainly to pump out water from the English iron and coal mines. This artificial power rapidly converted to driving force for the coming century. In years to come, this invention was used in textile production, mining, iron smelting and many other industrial quests. The beginning of 19th century witnessed yet another invention after the steam engine: railroads. The steam engines also directed the way to invention of first steamboats and then steamships that made regular journeys across the ocean, radically decreasing the time taken to travel overseas. There are many factors that can be taken into consideration which led to Industrial Revolution. However, there are three main factors to which this industrial age could be entrenched to: steam, iron and coal. Coal was used to fire the steam engines and was produced in huge quantities in England. These mechanical devices and other machines were designed and forged out of iron. The vagaries that started in the Industrial Revolution never actually came to an end. The roots of this revolution dated back 2,000 years ago. History speaks of Iron Age, which began in 1,000 years before Christ. When men carved weapons and tools of iron, the Iron Age sustains as we are still dependent on this essential metal, and the effects of Industrial Revolution persist to amend modern economies, creating undulations in the industrialized world. The Industrial Revolution symbols a key turn-off in history. Nearly every facet of day-to-day life was swayed in some way. In specific, average revenue and populace began to display extraordinary constant progress. Many economists say that the main effect of the Industrial Revolution was that the standard of living for the overall people arose steadily for the first time in history, though others say that it did not begin to evocatively progress till the late 19th and 20th centuries. At about the same time the Industrial Revolution was happening, Britain was experiencing an agricultural revolution which aided to expand the standard of living. In early 19th century, production of textile in a mechanized way spread from Great Britain to Europe, France being the home to most important centres. An important iron manufacturing centre established in Belgium, industrialisation spread fast throughout the world since its inception. The exact start and end date of the Industrial Revolution is still argued by the historians, as is the stride of social and economic change. GDP per capita was approximately steady prior to the Industrial Revolution and the advent of the modern capitalist economy, whereas the capitalist economies witnessed an age of per capita economic growth in the capitalist economies in the age of Industrial Revolution. Beginning of Industrial Revolution has been labelled as the most significant occurrence in the history of mankind since the domestication of plants and animals. Between the shifting years of 1840 and 1870, when technology and economy progressed rapidly, embracing steam transport and mass production of machine tools and the usage of machines in factories that were powered by steam, the first Industrial Revolution evolved to Second Industrial Revolution. Where it all started. There are many countries who have been active participants in the Industrial Revolution. However, It all started with Great Britain, which then slowly moved to America, Europe and the rest of the continent. Great Britain heads the way. Earlier, the English had become one of the most powerful nations of the world. Early in 18th century overseas trade made Britain a wealthy country. During the many wars that happened in the century, particularly the 7 Years' War, Britain extended their control over many colonies across the seas. England's man rival France lost control of Canada and India to the English in the mid-century. The English navy commanded powerful trading ships spread across the world. The English faced a lot of problems on various fronts. Population of British Isles multiplied quickly, which led to a shortage of wood and cloth. People replaced wood for coal and used it in place of wood to cook, heat the homes for smelting and blacksmithing. Huge demands for coal led to extensive mining. Miners dug deep to supply the people with coal, and to find coal in the surface was no more possible. Deep mines posed a problem because water seeped in them and something needed to be done to pump out the water from the mines. The solution was soon invented. Steam-powered pumps. These machines forced water out of the flooded coal mines, making it mineable again. Earlier, the English used wood to smelt iron, which they soon replaced with coal. First, they used charcoal to heat iron and to remove its carbon impurities, but later on, in the 18th century, these smelting industries started using coke, which was a greyish, hard substance produced when soft coal was heated in an airtight oven which removed the coke gas and coal tar as the fuel for smelting iron. This expanded the business of coal mining in England. Since Middle Ages, England was home to wool trade. The Englishmen raised sheep in their farms and spun thread which was later spun into woolen clothes and garments. The growing population now required clothes, and to overcome this shortage, many new machines took over the old system of cloth production. When the English expanded their trade to Egypt and India, they were introduced to a new type of material: cotton. There were thousands of women who worked to spin wool and now cotton, but since the requirement was too much, they lagged behind in the mass production. The old ways of using the spinning wheel could not keep up with the demand. There were two things required: more quantity and better quality, for which two things were required: good machines and to build faster. These setups required bigger space and bigger facilities, which led to the establishment of factories, which was also the result of Industrial Revolution. Revolution in metal industry. Once coal replaced wood and other types of natural fuels, there came about a drastic revolution in the metal industries. When given a certain amount of heat, coal needed less labour in mining than chopping wood and then turning it to charcoal. Coal was naturally obtainable in plentiful. Coal gained its importance in 1678 when Sir Clement Clerk and a few other inventors started using it in reverberatory furnaces called cupolas. These cupolas were operated by controlling flames on the charcoal, coke mixture and ore, which reduced the oxide to metal. The advantage of using this mechanism was that the impurities like sulphur ash did not combine with the metal. The same technology was later applied to smelt lead and copper in 1678 and 1687 respectively. Later in 1709, Abraham Darby successfully fueled his blast furnaces at Coalbrookdale with coke. The coke iron that was manufactured by him was used to make cast iron products like kettles and pots. He had patented his cast and hence had an advantage over his rivals because the pots Darby manufactured were thinner and cheaper compared to his competitors' products. Darby's sons established two furnaces at Ketley and Horsehay, who produced bar iron in the mid-1750s. Coke pig iron was now cheaper than charcoal pig iron, and since iron cast was also cheap, and was available in plenty, it was started to be used as materials to build new structures like the Iron Bridge of 1778. Till now, the ironsmiths still use the finery forges to make daily consumer products from the bar iron, but with the time, new procedures were developed and implemented in the years to come. The earlier methods were known as potting and stamping, which were later modified by Henry Cort's puddling process. Cort made two important iron-producing processes. In 1783 he developed the rolling process, and in 1784 he made the puddling process. In order to consolidate wrought iron and remove scum, hammering was replaced by rolling, which was about 15 times faster than hammering. Initially the rolling mills were used to make sheets, but later on the process was used to roll structural shapes like rails and angles. When pig iron was decarburized using slow oxidation and iron ore was used as a source of oxygen as it was stirred manually with the help of a long rod, the process was known as puddling. Decarburized iron has higher melting point compared to cast iron, so it was scraped into blobs by the puddler, and once the blob was big enough the puddler removed it. It was not easy to puddle in such high temperatures in the reverberatory furnace, and there were only some puddlers who made it to the age of 40. Puddling was used till the 19th century, when steel was slowly taking the place of iron. The process of puddling could never be mechanized as it needed the skills of a human to sense the iron blobs. Till mid-17th century, the British iron manufacturers used substantial quantities of iron that was imported to add on the local provisions, which mostly came from Sweden and Russia. Later, from the 1785, they stopped importing iron from the countries thanks to their iron-making technology and began exporting wrought iron products to customers and bar iron to other countries. The most vital development of the 19th century was the hot blast, which was made and patented by James Beaumont Nielsen. The process saved energy in the process of making pig iron. The combustion air was preheated by using waste exhaust heat, so the quantity of fuel required to make 1 unit of pig iron was decreased by around 1/3 if coal was using, and 2/3 if coke was used. The effectiveness was more every time the technology was bettered. Hot blast kept the temperatures of the furnaces high and helped in growing their capacity. The lesser the coke or coal was used, the fewer impurities was present in the pig iron. This also meant that anthracite or lower quality of coal could be used in places where coking could not be done, or the process was too expensive to be performed. Nevertheless, by the end of the 19th century, the transportation costs fell extensively. About 20 years before the Industrial Revolution laid its foundations, the production of steel, an expensive commodity then, was improved and used to make products like springs and cutting-edge tools, as iron couldn't be used to make such commodities. In 1740s, Benjamin Huntsman developed a crucible steel technique which used blister steel as raw material made by the cementation process. Inexpensive steel and iron helped many industries like nails, wire, hinges and hardware products. Improvement in the machine tools made it easy to work with iron, because of which the metal was used in making of machines and engine industries. Revolution in the textiles. For years, England was the spearhead in the making and extension of industrial revolution. There are some noteworthy reasons to why there was a sudden shift of England, from being dependent on agriculture to relying increasingly on industrialization. For example, in the 1700s, Britain was led by parliamentarians and ministers who reacted compassionately to commerce, trade and industrial expansion. Their lands were rich with raw materials such as coal and iron ore, and human labour was cheap. There were many financial institutions like banks and lending houses which helped in raising capital to purchase steam engines, make factories, construct mills and employ workers. Moreover, England had many overseas markets they had to be ready with products which could be used for trading like coal, iron, textiles or any other things. As it was highlighted on previous pages, one of the causes of industrial revolution was originated in the textile industry. When cotton material was introduced to England in 1600s, it completely changed the way of producing cotton thread and cotton materials. There were a serious improvements and creations that brought about the change. An English weaver, John Kay from Lancashire, invented the flying shuttle in 1733, in which a hand loom could be operated by a single person instead of two. However, the mass was not quite happy with the invention, as they thought the new machine could leave many people unemployed. The angry crowd attacked Kay's home and demolished it. Kay's flying shuttle took time to gain recognition, which however helped to improve the production speed of a single weaver, but the one-man loom needed thread from 4 to 5 spinners to keep a loom worker busy. Within years, in 1765, a carpenter from Lancashire, James Hargreaves, invented a spinning machine which could spin 8 threads at a time. He named the machine Jenny, after his wife. He patented his new invention in 1770. Slowly, the number of threads which a spinning machine could produce increased to 100. However, the cloth workers' reception of such new inventions was slow. As a matter of fact, Hargreaves too faced the same consequences as Kay when his house was attacked and his newly invented spinning jenny was burned. Cotton thread industry was transformed by these wonderful devices. The spinners were now spinning around 20,000 spinning jennies by 1778. This machine cut down the working hours which was spent in spinning thread and yarn. Earlier one had to work for 1,000 hours to make about 22 pounds of cotton thread, whereas the spinning jenny brought down the spinning hours to 400, and with further improvements and creations it came down to just 20 hours. Lancashire seemed to be home to many inventors. In 1769, Richard Arkwright, a barber from the same place, held patent to water frame. These rollers were powered by water which were used with spindles to produce coarse but strong thread. Some years later, Samuel Crompton, a